What's going on, guys? We are back with another breakdown of The Wire, this time for Season 1, Episode 3, titled The Buys. We've already broken down the first 2 episodes of Season 1. We got the links in the description. Check those out if you haven't yet. Otherwise, let's get right into it. So we ended off last episode with William Gant's murder hitting the papers, which fucks over everyone in the Baltimore PD. We open up this episode in the pit where D'Angelo is trying to give the youngins a lesson on manners. There's no need to treat the junkies like shit, because after all, no junkies, no business. And more brutality and violence leads to more attention from the cops. Kima and McNulty are watching from a nearby rooftop when Bubbles arrives with his red hat. He's already identified the Barksdale players in the terrace, and now it's time to identify those working the pit. They already know D, but now it's time to learn who the young kids are.
D understands his role, but at the same time, he has this level of compassion that seems almost too good for this world. This system does not care about the fact drugs are being consumed. They've already written that off as a sunk cost. McNulty would never have even taken a second look at the towers or the terrace if it wasn't for D dropping the body in episode 1. D only does this to Pooh because he was getting pressed and made an impulsive move. As we can see, he's not a killer by trade.
Now let's talk about the aftermath of the fuckery at the Terrace Towers. Remember last episode, Herc, Carver, and Prez did some really dumb shit at the towers, resulting in a young teen getting blinded in one eye. This debacle has put the Baltimore PD in a terrible position, and we now see how the higher-ups try and minimize the PR damage. The state's attorney has sent the case to the grand jury, but Deputy Ops Burrell isn't too concerned. There are 3 witnesses who say that Prez attacked the boy, but all 3 witnesses have heavy criminal histories, so they have no credibility. Prez most likely beats the case. Both Major Forrester and Valchek are relieved to hear this, and in fact, neither of them give a shit about the boy. This is also our first time seeing Valchek, the major in the Southeast District, who also happens to be Prez's father-in-law.
Besides Daniels falling on his sword this scene, it's funny how all the higher-ups are playing this off like it isn't a big deal.
It's all good, man.
When we saw firsthand just how idiotic the entire sequence was. Reed and Forrester in particular seem to go about the whole thing super casually.
You know how that goes, Commissioner. People's idea of police brutality is whenever we win a fight.
Now, Daniels wants Prez placed on administrative leave until the grand jury review is over, but Valchek begs for Prez to get another chance. He says that putting Prez on leave would make the Baltimore PD look weak, but he ends up getting overruled by Burrell. Fair is fair. Burrell then questions Daniels on what actually happened in the towers, putting Daniels in a terrible position. Even though Herc, Carver, and Prez were acting on their own, Daniels needs to be a good leader and take the blame, which he ultimately does. Valchek appreciates this and even admits that Prez is a bit of a fuck-up, but he still believes in the boy and he thinks that he can be good police under the right lieutenant's direction. It's a hilarious case of nepotism, but hey, that's how it works. Valchek then asks Daniels to walk Prez through this grand jury review, and in return he'll send over 2 unmarked vehicles and a surveillance van. And if Daniels needs any more additional resources, Valchek will provide. Sounds fair to me. Burrell also is thankful that Daniels doesn't kick Prez off the squad, and he reminds him to keep this Barksdale investigation tight, let it run for 3 weeks, see some drugs, and get out.
Hey man, Valchek's a bad boy. Daniels doesn't have much wiggle room in this scene, and his inner conflict is on full display the whole time. This back and forth is all about the system covering up its mistakes, writing off witnesses because of criminal records. Nasty work here. Valchek's title might as well be Chief Scumbag. His business as usual chumminess is a clear contrast from Daniels, who wants to be a good leader, yet he still plays the game reluctantly.
Unnecessary evil.
It's clear all they want to do is shut Phelan up with a couple arrests. The higher-ups still don't take the growing Barksdale empire seriously.
Yeah, even with Gant's murder hitting the papers, Baltimore PD still doesn't really take the Barksdale threat seriously. However, they do have to hold a press conference to address the story. We see Major Rawls reiterating that Gant's murder is completely unrelated to him being a witness. Obviously, the news reporters don't buy it, but Rawls keeps pushing the same message, and he even has Bunk say it as well. Okay, so now let's jump over to the Barksdale Unit and see how the actual investigation is going. We know from the opening scene that Kima and McNulty have now identified the youngsters working in the pit. However, they still don't have a picture of Avon Barksdale himself. McNulty tells the 2 lazy fucks Polk and Mahone to go to the housing department and pull a photo of Avon, since the housing projects began to take photos of every known resident. Avon grew up in the project, so there's a good chance he has a photo there. Mahone tells McNulty to do it himself, but McNulty is relentless and finally gets these two useless bastards to go out and do some police work. Polk and Mahone return later on with a photo of Avon Barksdale, except it's a photo of a middle-aged white man. There's 0% chance that Avon Barksdale is white, so the photo in the housing department files must be of someone else. Most likely Avon paid someone off and got his picture swapped out. Now obviously Polk and Mahone weren't going to do deeper research on the matter, so they clock out and McNulty and Kima can do nothing else but just laugh. This does prompt a serious question though. Just what do they actually know about Avon Barksdale? He's 31, born in West Baltimore, keeps a low profile, no tax information, no driver's license, no cars in his name, no kids. He's got no criminal record, he has multiple girlfriends, maybe one in New York, and he stays in multiple locations. He loves to work out though and used to box Golden Gloves when he was younger. This part gets the attention of sleepy Lester Freeman, and he wakes up and asks how Kima got the Golden Gloves info. When she confirms that it came from a CI, Lester Freeman grabs his coat and leaves without saying a word. Lester pulls up to a boxing gym in West Baltimore and talks to an old man running the place. We don't know what he says or how he got the intel, but he returns to the office with a giant poster of a boxing card fight poster with Avon's face on it. They're finally able to put a face to Avon. Freeman then walks off without saying a thing, and both Kima and McNulty looked impressed and shocked.
Lester's monk-like demeanor and skill could not be any different from our favorite shitheads, Polk and Mahone, who are absolutely lit up in this scene, by the way. Freeman is tenacious, yet doesn't do too much. These two are operating on a cruise ship mentality at all times. What we shouldn't ignore is how meticulous Avon has been. There's a survival of the fittest at play in this environment. Darwin dictates that those who can best use their environment will last the longest. Evading detection and hiding your identity while being top dog means you can run shit in West Baltimore indefinitely with limited hurdles. Even though they'd catch him quickly if this would have happened in the 2020s, for Avon to pull this off in the early 2000s is also impressive.
Now, not everyone in the Barksdale unit is useless. Detective Sydnor, who was one of Lieutenant Cantrell's best men, is now in the detail and plans to go undercover. The problem is that Baltimore PD is broke as hell, so their undercover equipment is from the 80s. It's far too bulky and would blow Sydnor's cover. They need to reach out to the feds to get better equipment. McNulty and Kima pull up to Agent Fitzhugh's to borrow some modern undercover equipment. Fitzhugh says that the FBI doesn't have any intel on Avon, but he does show them a recent drug bust that they made. Remember the operation that Fitzy was showing McNulty back in episode 1? Well, they finally made the bust and it should be a career case for Fitz. However, since the focus is now on terrorism, the bosses aren't going to care as much. But Fitz does come through and lend some good equipment to the team. Sydnor gets ready to go undercover as a junkie in West Baltimore. Bubbles will be with him during this operation. On the surface, Sydnor's outfit looks to fit the part. He's unshaven and hasn't showered in a few days. His clothes are brand name but old and stained. His microphone is hidden in his crotch area. Kima has Bubbles take a closer look and he isn't impressed. First of all, Sydnor has his wedding ring on, which is a dead giveaway. A true junkie would have sold it already for drug money. Sydnor also looks too healthy to be a junkie. He could stand to lose about 20 pounds and have a few stains on his teeth, some cuts on his hands. Lastly, the bottom of Sydnor's shoes are too clean. A true junkie would have pieces of glass stuck in the rubber, all from stepping on empty glass vials, which Bubbles refers to as dead soldiers. Sydnor is humbled, but he takes the critique in stride.
Yeah, if we're being real, Bubs probably saved Sydnor a nasty beating. A guy like Bubbles sets an investigation apart because this is insider info you would never consider from the police perspective. This speaks to some of the incompetence we've seen from the start of the season. If you don't have any knowledge and connection to the streets, you're doomed to make the same silly mistakes on a consistent basis. This is why the police department is on such a losing streak.
So after making the necessary adjustments, Sydnor goes with Bubbles down to the projects and they make several drug buys, all while Kima is taking photos for evidence. They have enough evidence to make some basic arrests, but all the actual transactions have been done by kids and teenagers. They haven't been able to tie any drugs to any of the real Barksdale people that matter. Kima and the gang are disappointed, but McNulty isn't surprised since he had already told them that doing the hand-to-hands would be a pointless endeavor. He'll catch a bunch of teens and send them to juvie, but the gang leaders are never going to get caught with dope in their hands. Daniels returns to the office and tells them that Deputy Ops Burrell now wants them to gather all of the evidence that they got from the low-level drug buys and conduct a raid on the projects on Wednesday afternoon. McNulty and Kima are furious. The raids aren't going to get them shit. They might not even find any drugs since they change stash houses every few days. Daniels agrees with them as well, and he isn't happy about this, but hey, he follows chain of command, so he's got no choice but to comply, and he tells McNulty and Kima to start typing up reports right now to prepare for the raids. McNulty is so mad that he doesn't even want to type up the reports, so he storms off. This leaves Kima as the only one to do it, which is such an asshole move by McNulty.
Yeah, somebody commented on the last video questioning if McNulty was a decent guy, and just might have a point on this one.
No, don't major me, you backstabbing smartass piece of shit.
He's known to let his ego take the front seat too often, which tends to screw over those close to him. Just because you're right doesn't mean you can throw a fit. The silver lining is that Daniels doesn't actually want this. It pains him that he can't carry the case through in the way that will snag them Avon.
An angry and sad McNulty then heads to the Assistant State Attorney Rhonda Perlman's house. McNulty has actually been smashing Perlman and basically treating her as his fuck buddy, and Perlman isn't happy to see him, but she lets him inside anyways. McNulty isn't just there for pleasure though, he's also there to do some work for the case. When he and Bunk initially frisked D'Angelo at the pit, they found a pager. Knowing that the Barksdale crew communicates using pagers, McNulty asked Rhonda if she knows how to clone a pager. That way they can start tracking what the Barksdale crew says to each other. Rhonda says it is possible to clone a pager, but a lot of paperwork is needed. You have to show probable cause plus exhaustion. Exhaustion means that you have tried every other investigative method, but have failed. Once you can prove that, then yes, the judge will sign a subpoena, allowing you to clone a pager. McNulty gets ready to leave, but now Rhonda is offended. You come to my house at 9 p.m. at night, and now you don't even want to fuck? So McNulty goes for a kiss, and then Rhonda pulls back. Apparently McNulty was actually cheating on his ex-wife with Rhonda, and they were meeting in hotel rooms back then to keep everything on the low. Now that McNulty is single, he could take Rhonda on a proper date, but instead he opts to just pull up to her spot. McNulty is an asshole, but he doesn't hide who he is, and that's enough to get Rhonda to fuck him anyways. Chicks dig bad guys, even if it's only temporary. I don't make the rules.
Sometimes honesty is underrated, but McNulty, come on, all that debauchery and you can only spring for the best Western? This guy's a menace. Sounds like Phelan or Daniels would have to help out to get the ball rolling on the pager deal. There are plenty of critiques we can make relating to the justice system's bureaucratic bullshit, but this isn't one of them. You gotta keep a tight lid on the pathway to cloning a device, because if that power got abused, we could be living in a nightmarish police state where personal communication could be intercepted.
Another detective on the Barksdale Unit, Santangelo, also works in homicide with McNulty. McNulty and Santangelo were originally supposed to work together per Lieutenant Daniels' orders. We see Santangelo actually giving Rawls updates on what's going on in the Barksdale Unit. So I guess Rawls is making Santangelo his mole inside the Barksdale detail. Rawls blames McNulty for Gant's murder hitting the papers, and he doesn't want to get blindsided anymore. Santangelo just wants to go back to homicide, but Rawls tells him to stay on the Barksdale detail and he'll get a favor down the line from the Major himself. Alright, so we've spent the majority of this video talking about the Barksdale Unit and what they've been up to, but there's also been some interesting stuff developing in the pit, so let's jump over there for a bit. There's this interesting scene at the pit where business is on standby because they've sold out. Dee catches Bodie and Wallace playing checkers, except they're using chess pieces. The two teens don't know how to play chess, but Dee teaches them using chess pieces as an analogy for the drug game. Avon represents the king, Stringer represents the queen, the rooks represent the stash house, and so on. We get to the point where Dee teaches them about the pawns, the weakest of the pieces. The ones on the front line meant to fight and die first if it comes to it. If a pawn makes it to the end of the board, it can become queen, but never the king, since the king stay the king. Now, most of the time the pawns just get capped unless, as Bodie puts it, you happen to be a smart-ass pawn.
One of my favorite scenes of the season, I think. That's the hope sold to guys like him. You see so many kids involved in Avon's operation and wonder why they gravitate toward it, when a huge percentage of people in his crew end up either behind bars or dead. There's a certain promise of big money and the allure of being someone that shines above all the day-to-day desperation. Just based on interactions, you also get the sense that there's a familial aspect to being within the Barksdale crew as well. When the Pit Boys are first playing checkers instead of chess, there's an obvious metaphor somewhere in here. Dee likes strategy and is good at it. He's just not meant for this game. He's at best a talented pawn or a wannabe bishop perhaps.
Later on in the pit, the dealers are handing out tester vials to the junkies. While this is going on, we see the operation being staked out by 3 guys in a van. They see where the stash house is, and now will be an easy target for when they decide to rob the place later. The leader is the oldest one amongst them, and he's got a scar coming down his face. He calls the Barksdale operation in the pit very sloppy. We also see a scene where D pulls up to the strip club to deliver money to Stringer. Now here's where our viewers can help us because I'm genuinely curious about this. The money is the earnings from the pit. Now D says it's about $22,400, and Stringer is impressed by the amount of money that D has been able to generate from the low rises. Now is $22,400 referring to $22,400 or $2,240? Stringer says, I don't ever remember a day where we got this much from the courtyards. Now, $22,400 for a day's work seems to be way too high, so my gut says the amount is $2,240. Still an enormous amount of money for a day's work of selling drugs. Anyways, I'm curious to hear what the viewers think. Stringer gives D some money as a bonus, and when D mentions that they'll sell even more drugs once the new package comes in, Stringer laughs. The drugs remain the same in terms of quality, they merely change the color of the caps on the vials and call it a new package. No matter what, they'll sell since it's heroin. D takes the bonus and goes back down to the strip club. This time he finds the stripper who tried asking for a drink before. Her name is Chardine and she's standoffish to D because D refused to buy her a drink last time. D pulls the hey, Avon is my uncle and he's actually the one who owned this club and I work with my uncle card, and all of a sudden Chardine seems interested.
The D and Stringer debrief helps paint the picture of who String represents in this organization. He's the business brain and lacks the type of humanity that a guy like D is somewhat known for. Stringer's cold, calculated, and never naive. He's the perfect foil for D. Even in the following scene with Darlene, you can see that D is still very green and a bit of a mark in certain areas of, say, social awareness, for reasons that shouldn't have to be stated.
So now it's nighttime at the pit and the re-up is on the way soon. We see Stinkum guarding the outside of the stash house, waiting for the fresh package of drugs to arrive. Out of nowhere, we see the man with the scarred face break into the stash house alongside one of the two younger guys that were in the van with him. They all got guns pointed at everyone, and the scarred man has a very menacing shotgun on him. We see Stinkum get tossed inside the stash house, his face bloodied and bruised. Bodie and Poot get tossed inside as well. All the Barksdale guys have their hands above their heads in a surrender position. The scarred man points his gun at one of the guys and asks where the stash is. When the guy refuses to tell him, the scarred man shoots the guy's knee. He then points the shotgun at one of the young teens working for the Barksdales and asks, "Where it at, shorty?" After seeing what just happened to the other guy, the kid reluctantly tells him that it's in the kitchen under the sink. One of the scarred man's accomplices goes and finds 2 G-packs worth of vials under the sink. The scarred man asks the boy if that's all there is, and the boy nods his head. The accomplice wants to get out of there quickly, so he makes the mistake of panicking and addressing the scarred man by his real name, Omar, as he pleads for them to take the G-packs and leave. This is a major mistake, and we see Bodie recognize this and remember the name, Omar, the scarred man bold enough to rob drug dealers. Omar and his gang take the drugs and dip out. D returns as the van is driving away, and we see that Bubbles was actually sitting outside quietly watching the whole thing.
It's looking like survival of the fittest again out here. Big difference in how Omar and the police have been operating. He was casing earlier and biding his time to make his move, similar to how Kima and the others have been gathering intel, but it's ironic that Omar was able to locate the stash far more effectively with far fewer resources. Knowledge is power. If you remember, the police keep commenting on how tight the Barksdales run the ship. Omar has the almost complete opposite reaction.
It's real raggedy ass shit here, boy. Very sloppy.
If you don't protect what's yours in the game, it can be snatched away in a second. Moving with caution and intent will reward you more times than not. To that point, making a run for a sandwich at this moment was not the move, D. I do want to try a lake trout sandwich sometime though. It's not really trout, which is more of an acquired taste. It's actually a fried up fish sandwich made from a white fish with hot sauce.
So now it's time for the Barksdale unit to conduct their raids on the pit. Daniels is getting the troops ready and we see everyone vested up. Kima, Carver, Santangelo, Sydnor, Freeman, shit, even Polk and Mahone. McNulty, however, is still in his suit. He's refusing to vest up and join the raid because he thinks that the raid will be harmful to the case. Daniels calls him aside and yells at McNulty for being insubordinate. If McNulty isn't going to join the raid, then he needs to write a report stating that he's sick and can't physically join. McNulty says, "Fuck that, I'm going to do real police work," and he storms off. Since McNulty technically reports to Rawls, there isn't much that Daniels can do, so he lets McNulty leave and he tells the rest of the team to head out. Herc has finally recovered from getting hit in the head in the tower incident, and he makes it in time to join the raid. We see that Prez is forced to stay in the office, and he looks sad as fuck.
Prez is looking like the family dog in the window after everybody else drives off to go out for dinner at Applebee's. McNulty is just different. Asshole behavior, but with so many people taking marching orders regardless of the consequence, it's refreshing to see someone take a stand. Granted, it's what's already made him a lot of enemies to this point. Daniels thought the convo with McNulty was going to go similar to what he pulled with Prez Dumb and Dumber last episode. He's a good leader, but you can only patch so many holes in a leaky operation, and this isn't incompetence from Jimmy, it's willful disobedience to prove a point.
We cut to the pit and we see Weebay yelling at D for not being there when the re-up happened. It's not just Stinkum's responsibility to be the muscle, D is running the pit and he needs to have his guys ready. Weebay says that they'll need to get revenge on Omar. Bodhi tells Weebay that Omar was also driving a white van. Before they can go any further, the cops pull up to conduct the raids. They approach what they think is the stash house, but Bodhi tells Weebay that it's the wrong house. They switched the stash yesterday. The cops approach them and make them turn around and put their hands up. We see Barksdale members all around the pit being put in handcuffs. Mahone goes up to cuff Bodhi, and Bodhi loses his mind and knocks Mahone down with a punch. It's fucking hilarious seeing Mahone on the ground clutching his arm even though he got punched in the face. This gives the green light for the rest of the cops to beat the fuck out of Bodhi, and Carver starts going to town with a nightstick while Kimo also runs over to join the beatdown. Outside of Bodhi punching a cop, the raid yields no drugs. However, Lester Freeman discovers a set of numbers on the wall in the stash house and he writes them down. Otherwise, the raid was a waste of time, exactly as McNulty predicted.
Yeah, this scene is the first time I lost a little respect for Kima. She rolls in hot to start kicking Bodhi in the ribs even though he's already subdued. Definitely some questionable police work. The kids watching in the background show us just why there's a distrust of the cops and the projects. Think about the interactions we've seen so far from the BPD with the towers and the pit. To rewind a bit, I love Weebay's explanation to D as to why he dropped the ball. Hassan Johnson puts the perfect amount of juice behind his performance, one of my favorite characters, and he represents the muscle of the old guard and a guy who is never afraid to be a soldier. Bodhi has more in common with Weebay than D. He's alert and down for whatever. Unfortunately, that fire can boil over from time to time. Now listen, you can't hit a cop, but you just know Mahone's breath was reeking of Jameson or Jack as he heavily patted down Bodhi. Poke giving his boy a toke off the cig to bring him back to life was amazing. Say what you will about these two, but they have a loyalty to each other that most friendships will never know. Mahone with an amazing WWE sell job on that hit too. He knows that disability settlement could potentially bankroll his Keno habit for years to come.
Yeah man, Mahone really got it made. Alright, let's finish off this video with some additional storylines that we want to mention for this episode. First of all, we see a mutual respect developing between McNulty and Kima. Throughout the episode, we see them spending a lot of time together since Daniels has put them in charge of running the investigation. They both learn a lot more about each other. McNulty is recently divorced but has two sons, Mike and Sean, who are 8 and 10 respectively. His ex-wife is limiting his visitation privileges, and we learn it's because McNulty was a serial cheater.
Love that Bubbles sniffs out McNulty's dirty laundry right away. The man has instincts, which we see in how he works the targets of the case and how he runs his own game.
Kima, meanwhile, reveals to McNulty that she's a lesbian, which surprises him. She also tells him a bit more about her earlier experiences being a woman on the force. It took some time for her to overcome the fear of doing police work out in the streets, but now she loves the fucking job.
It's a rough world, but Kima shows she's built to handle the bullshit. McNulty's reaction is indicative of who he is too. Is he a little problematic? Maybe so. But his praise is genuine, and when he's cool with you, you can tell he's got your back. All scenes with McNulty and Kima are must-watch television. Solid chemistry.
Another storyline involves Lieutenant Daniels potentially being a dirty cop. At the end of the episode, we see Agent Fitzhugh meet with McNulty in a parking lot. He tells McNulty that about a year ago, someone from Baltimore PD had contacted the FBI and wanted them to conduct an investigation on Daniels. They didn't want to go through internal affairs since they were afraid that this news would leak to Daniels. So Fitzhugh's office investigated Daniels for a 2-month stretch and looked into his assets. He's got a couple $100,000 more in assets than any police lieutenant should have. McNulty is still skeptical. Maybe Daniels won the money gambling or has other sources of income. Fitz admits that's a possibility, their office never dug any deeper, They brought back what they initially found to Baltimore PD, specifically to Deputy Ops Burrell, and that was the end of that. Burrell said, "We'll take it from here," and then nothing else came of the investigation. So Burrell has a bit of dirt on Daniels.
What I take out of this is that McNulty still wanted to stand up for Daniels and didn't quite believe the theory at first. These two still share some common ground, and Jimmy didn't seem too psyched to uncover the news. An irregularity like this would help explain why Daniels has been such a company man at times.
Alright, that does it for our episode 3 breakdown. Thank you everyone for watching. We'd love to hear what you guys thought about the episode as well, so comment below if you got something to say. We will be back with episode 4 shortly.